Let's go ahead and jump in and talk some hoops, Jonathan.
Yeah.
West Virginia with a big win over Utah. They scared us a little bit, though, didn't they?
Yeah. If it wasn't interesting enough a couple weeks ago against Cincinnati, it got interesting last night. I don't know how many eyes were awake to see it because it was late.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, what a win. Listen, I know I'm not trying to call Utah going to Arizona, even going to Kansas. I'm not trying to say it's going to Houston and getting a win, but I don't think you can minimize it. Listen, you're a tired basketball team. You're a depleted basketball team. Injuries are catching up with you. You're down a couple, and it didn't look good early. Utah seemingly early on made every single shot they threw up, could not miss. They battled back to get it at halftime, and then early in that second half, here come Utah again, and they battled back again to close it out. So it was just a gutsy win. It was good to see this team. They were out there for several days out west. Fought hard against BYU first half and then in a raffle. But listen, BYU's a good basketball team. They're a good basketball team. So it was nice to get this. We've talked here for several weeks now about what West Virginia needed to do to get in the NCAA tournament. Couz, they're in.
I think so.
They are absolutely in. And now, to me, you are. I think they're in today. I don't think they're even a bubble team. Here's where it gets a little dicey. Happens every March. There's a few surprise teams that go on a run. Maybe they win their conference tournament, and so one of these smaller conferences now don't get just one; they get two. Maybe look at an NC State. Was it last year?
Yep.
That I don't even know if they were even on the bubble, and then they got hot. And it almost got to the point after 4 or 5 in a row, 6 in a row, you had to put them in. And so there's always going to be those teams. And so if you're West Virginia, you have to take care of business Saturday against UCF. Yeah. That's a must. What's that get us, Couz? 19 wins.
19 wins.
And we've talked about this. 19 made you sleep okay. Made you sleep pretty good.
Yep.
20 you were like a baby. Yeah. There's also a lot to play for. If you look at the projections for the Big 12 tournament, depending on a couple outcomes, I want to grain of salt this, but I think I'm right. If West Virginia beats UCF and Kansas loses at Arizona, I think
which is very possible, by the way.
I believe that gets West Virginia to a bye and the 7 seed. And so you like that. You like that spot. It gives you a little extra rest. And 7's much better than if what looked to be a 9 or a 10 or even an 11 if you would have lost Utah. So, there was a couple must wins there at the end. Cincinnati was a must win. They got it. TCU was a must win. They got it.
Yep.
You could afford the Texas Tech and the BYUs.
Yep. Because they were ranked and they were already expected to beat you anyway.
Didn't hurt you. And then Utah was a must win, and they got it. So just an unbelievable job by this team. Here we are this late in the year, and they're still fighting. So I think as of today, they are 100% in, no question. You're just trying to prepare yourself for those 1, 2, 3+ teams that are going to shock you and get in, or you're kind of, are you playing for the 9 or are you playing for the 10 seed?
Yeah. Well said.
And there's a lot of people, Couz, there's a lot of people that would prefer that 10 over the 9. Because let's be realistic here. I don't think you want to. We had this debate today on social media on X. I don't know that I want to run into. You're probably not going to play Houston because they're not going to put you up, preferably against a Big 12 opponent. You want to play Duke? You want to play Auburn? listen, we've even said this before. You're not going to luck your way through the tournament by dodging people. You have to play them. But there's a huge belief that you'd rather be in that 10 spot than 9.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me ask you something. I actually stayed up late enough to do a post game live show last night, and I was thinking about something, and I was live on show thinking about it out loud. Kind of asked the people in the chat, but I want to ask you this: do you think it will be to West Virginia's advantage because they're so thin roster wise, because Javon's played so many minutes? Do you think it would actually benefit them potentially to losing the first round of the Big 12 tournament so that they get a longer rest period before the NCAA start? Or do you think they would be rusty? Would you be too afraid they'd get rusty doing that?
If I felt like, no, I think I'd rather the win. Yeah, and the reason why I would say that is I'd go back to the NC State argument. There is
Yeah.
you just never know when you're going to catch that ball of fire, and
Yeah.
you're going to get that roll. And I believe momentum's a real thing. It doesn't disparage what you're saying, because on the surface, I agree with you. And we've talked about it. I just said it. This team's tired. They're thin. They're probably a little sore, banged up, and we know
Especially Eduardo Andre.
And I believe Javon Small's still kind of fighting a little bit
KJ Tenner has been he's been
I
limping a
mean,
little bit, it looks like, at
yeah,
times.
and I think these guys are having to play so many minutes, and DeVries has done a really good job trying to space that out the best he can. But no, I mean, I don't know that it would be the worst thing, but I guess if I had my preferences, I would rather just that role
Well,
take on.
I probably didn't ask the question. If you and again, this is a total hypothetical. We can't read the future, but if you knew that they couldn't win the tournament, that they were only going to get to the second or third round anyway, wouldn't you rather them just lose in the first round and get that extra rest?
You mean what would
In
be
the
in the
Big 12
second
tournament?
in what would be the second round?
Yes.
Yeah. If you feel like you're firmly in, if you've got 19 wins because you beat UCF,
Yeah.
um,
Or win a game. I don't know. It was just something I thought of. Normally, I would never say that because I mean, and obviously, I'm never going to cheer for them to lose a game.
yeah.
But not.
So my mind
There's a
rambled.
reason teams play for buys, right? They want
Sure,
buys for a reason.
sure.
That's where I'm going with it.
Yeah, and agree that I think that's important. I think my mind rambles a little bit with that. Is, if you did lose, who's it against? Right? Is it somebody that you potentially that could take a spot?
Yeah, that's a
Is
good
it
point.
is it a
Yeah.
Cincinnati who's fighting for their life? Is it a TCU? Is it a Baylor?
Yeah.
Um,
Great point.
so that I would be nervous that one team would be the one that could potentially get that role and catch fire and maybe take my spot. Completely valid, because the truth is this team needs a little bit of rest and as much health as they can, because if they that 8-9 matchup is tough if they're a 9. That 7-10 matchup is going to be tough. And then if you were to be fortunate enough to go by there, you're going to have a 1 or you're going to have a 2 waiting on you. So you're going to need probably as much rest as you can. But I'm just a huge proponent of just keep that momentum rolling, because I
Yeah.
think we've seen it in the past.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they do get a few days rest between anyway, but it's not a full week. I think it's only if you make it to the conference title game, I think you only get 4 days off maybe before the tournament starts, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. I'm trying to look. Sorry for me doing this. If
It's all
if
right.
they can win Saturday, it believes the projection is there wouldn't be a game until Wednesday. And that appears to be a late night game, the 7 p.m. slot.
That's a little better.
So that would give you, I mean, that would be much better than having to play Tuesday. I mean,
Oh
you'd
yeah,
literally
for
have,
sure.
and one of those days are travel days. So if you could play Wednesday night, that's going to give you Sunday. It's going to give you Monday. You're going to have a travel day. So technically, you're going to get a couple days, 3 days off. So Yeah, it's a good question, and really one that I think you could almost make an argument both ways.
And it won't be this year because it's too close. But one of these days, Jonathan, I'm going to
Yeah,
take my bald rear end to Kansas City and watch the Big 12 tournament.
man, I know.
I've
I've
heard so many awesome things about it. I've heard it's a great time. Man, it's so daggone far for us, man.
It is. I would love to go. I'll say that I have been, which is ironic because West Virginia doesn't play in these conferences. I've been to an ACC tournament because where we're at, they're in Charlotte.
Yeah, it's 3 hours away.
It's an easy drive. It's a good drive. The weather's usually nice. It's all downtown. I've been there. I've actually been to an SEC tournament, um, and I'll say a conference basketball tournament is unlike anything else. And the Big 12 does it right. They
Yeah,
do it right.
yeah,
And yeah, I'd absolutely love to go. And what would be even better than going and watching your team and watching them make a run?
that'd be awesome.
That
Yeah,
would be fun. But
yeah. But they say it's a really good time that
yep,
the Big 12 does things right, like you said, and they have a lot of stuff going on outside of just the basketball. So they have food, special food, and they have entertainment with DJs and singers and all kinds of stuff. So
yep,
uh, yeah, it'd be a good time, man. But in Kansas City, I think it's about a 9 hour drive from here,
yeah.
something like that.
It's a pretty good trip. And hey, I love barbecue,
Yeah,
so I think I'd love to make the
me
trip.
too. Me too. I also plan at some point, hopefully, to get to Dallas or Frisco or whenever to either the Big 12 Combine or Media Days or something one of these days. That's a even longer drive. I'd probably fly that one. But I looked at the route, and we're totally off topic here, but the route to get to Dallas from here takes you through Nashville, Tennessee, and Memphis, Tennessee. There'd be
Yeah.
nice little stopovers on the way.
They would be nice. I'd like to go. I'd like to go, and you know what? The future is seemingly is pretty bright for this West Virginia team.
Mm-hmm.
So might just happen to be something we put on the
Yeah.
calendar. But
Maybe one of these days you and I take a guys trip, man, and we do
mm,
that.
I'd love it. I'd love it. I think the question is too. And I'll say this real quick: is how far do you think West Virginia can make the run in the Big 12 tournament? A lot of it is matchup dependent.
It is. I'd have to see that's why I
Um,
was like, I'd have to see the brackets first to see how they match up.
But hypothetically, if you were that 7 matchup, you're going to get a Kansas State and Arizona State with the potential to play maybe a Texas Tech. So
Winnable.
winnable, and then
I'll see them getting to
after
the semifinals probably.
that, the odds are pretty good that you would get an Iowa State.
Who
So
you've already beaten once.
you have. So
I mean, I mean, we've seen Bob Huggins' teams make it. We've seen they played in the Big 12 title game twice or three times.
yeah,
Never were able to win it, but and I mean, this team, the way they're built, the way the culture is, they're mature. They don't get rattled. They're not afraid of the moment. We've seen when they need to win games, they step up and do it. For the most part, it's not always pretty, and they
yeah,
might make you nervous at the end, but they find a way to get it done, right?
they do.
And I wouldn't put it past them to make a run. I think they have the ability to do it, and I think Coach DeVries is good enough to coach them to do it. By the way, what about that stat that if he wins 2 more games, if he wins against UCF on Saturday and he won one game in the Big 12 tournament, he will have 20 wins in every season of his career.
I I think that just I think we're witnessing this season. We're witnessing that stat in real time on how good of a coach he really is.
Yeah.
Who's 20 wins. That's
With it,
and I don't know about the prior seasons. You know, when you get to Drake, I certainly don't know about early on, but he built that culture. He built that team. So it's surprising in a way that he was able to carry it that long, but it's not surprising in the sense of once you get that ball rolling, it almost gets on autopilot, right?
mm-hmm.
The job he would have done this year with this team after what it was. And you want to talk about a roller coaster of a season. From the very beginning, it was a complete rebuild. Then you're like, you know what? We've got some depth. We've got some players. Then you lost some guys. And then it was just up and down. And to still, even to be at 18 wins, potentially 19 plus, yeah, what an unbelievable coaching job. And honestly, it's just kind of fun that we're able to witness it. His level of intensity and passion for the game, it's in a way not surprising because he is 100% somebody you would want to play for and
Yeah.
give maximum effort.
Yeah. And if Ren Baker, if you're listening, and maybe he is, I don't know. He's been on the show before, so maybe he is listening. If you are, lock him up.
Yep.
Please. Mountaineer Nation is begging you to lock him up. Keep Iowa or anybody else that may come calling away because we want to keep Darren DeVries in Morgantown for as long as possible.
A long time.
For as long as until he has a losing season, then we want to run him. And I'm kidding.
Yeah. Hey, you want to?
That's what we do, right?
but we're going to really get going. But when you talk about where West Virginia is today with coaches, the job DeVries has done, the job Coach Kellogg has done with the women's team.
Look what Saban's is doing with baseball.
Saban's is doing. Rich Rod is back. Yeah.
The men's soccer team still competing at a high level. The women's soccer team still doing well with Nikki Izzo Brown.
Could even throw golf in the mix.
Golf is doing well. The Celia McCabe is an Olympian on the women's track side. Rifles still competing for national championships.
But just a special time right now with special coaches, and it's not something that we get going in the moment, and I think we realize it, but we don't really think about it.
The wrestling team, by the way, got ranked for the first time in years last year.
Yeah, so just a nice time to have some quality coaches in Morgantown for sure.
And Renbaker hired he didn't hire all those coaches, but he hired several of them.
Yep.
So got to give hats off to Ren for the job he's done so far as AD, in my opinion, and for those coaches who have done such a good job in proving Ren right so far in his hires.
Yep, absolutely.